I used to think loving someone fully was my greatest strength. I now know it can also be your greatest vulnerability, especially when you give it to the wrong person. This is the story of how I lost myself in a dumped relationship, and how I found something I never expected to find. Her. I remember it was a Thursday because I had just gotten off a double shift at the bookstore where I worked part-time, and my feet ached in the way only 8 hours of standing can produce. My hair smelled faintly of old paper and coffee, and I was wearing that oversized cream cardigan Adrian always said made me look too soft. I should have gone home, but I missed him. God, I missed him. The way you miss someone you see every week, the way loving someone too much makes you ache for them even when you were just together 2 days ago. That was me. That was always me with Adrian Cole. Loving him like he was air. Like without him, I'd forget how to breathe. So I stopped by the corner bakery and bought his favorite, a slice of red velvet cake with cream cheese frosting, wrapped in plastic with a little red ribbon. I tied myself in the car like a complete fool, and I drove to his apartment. I didn't call ahead. I wanted to surprise him.
Surprise.
What a word. His spare key was cold against my palm as I slipped it into the lock. The lights in the hallway were low. I remember smiling to myself, thinking maybe I'd find him asleep on the couch with a game on, the way he always was on weeknights. I'd climb beside him and tuck myself under his arm, and he'd stir just enough to press a lazy kiss to my temple, and I heard it before I saw it. Laughter.
Low.
Feminine. Not mine. I stood in the doorway of his bedroom for what felt like 3 years of my life condensed into 6 seconds. My fingers went numb. The red velvet cake hit the floor. He looked up. She looked up. And Adrian Cole, the man I had loved faithfully, loyally, completely for 3 years, stared at me with something that wasn't guilt. It was irritating. Bella.
His voice was flat.
You should have called. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. The woman beside him pulled the sheet up and had the grace to at least look away. I was still holding the car keys. I could feel every tooth of the key biting into my fingers. My voice cracked in half. I brought you. Close the door on your way out. Something in my chest didn't just break. It collapsed. Like a building that had been quietly rotting from the inside finally caving in on itself. All at once. Adrian. He sat up and ran a hand through his hair with that familiar sigh, the one I used to think meant he was tired from work. Now I understood it differently. It was the sigh of someone tolerating an inconvenience.
Me.
I was the inconvenience. Look, he said, in that calm, distant tone that always preceded something devastating, you're too emotional, Bella. You always have been. I've been trying to figure out how to say this for a while now. I'm tired. I'm tired of pretending this relationship works. I stared at him. 3 years. 3 years of covering his rent when he was between jobs. 3 years of defending him to my mother who always said, that boy has cold eyes, Bella. 3 years of choosing him every single day, with everything I had. I'm tired of pretending this relationship works. Like I had been to a performance he'd grown bored of. I didn't cry in front of him. I don't know how I managed that, some hollow animal pride, maybe. I picked up the cake box from the floor with shaking hands, turned around and walked out. It was raining outside. Of course it was raining. I sat in my car for 45 minutes.
I didn't drive.
I didn't call anyone.
I just sat there while.
So was I thought. I went back the next afternoon to get my things. I had a box. One of those sad medium-sized cardboard boxes that feels like the physical embodiment of a failed relationship. I timed it for when I knew Adrian would be at work. I couldn't look at him yet. I wasn't ready. What I hadn't planned for was her. Lillian Cole, Adrian's stepsister, was sitting on the front steps of the apartment building when I arrived. She had an open book in her lap, though she didn't seem to be reading it. Her dark hair fell loose over one shoulder. Looked up when she heard the gate. Her eyes found mine immediately. I had met Lily maybe a dozen times over the course of my relationship with Adrian. She was always quiet around me, not cold, just contained, like someone who had learned to take up very little space. She'd bring tea without being asked. She'd sit in the corner of the room during gatherings and watch people with these dark, thoughtful eyes that always made me feel faintly like she was reading something written beneath your skin. I'd always thought she simply didn't like me very much. I was wrong about a lot of things. Bella, she said softly. My name in her mouth was always different somehow. Fuller. Like she put extra care into the syllables. Hey, Lily. My voice was still wrecked from the night before. I could hear it. I'm just here to grab some stuff. She stood slowly, her gaze moved across my face with quiet precision, taking in the puffy eyes, the hollow cheekbones, the way I was gripping the cardboard box like it was keeping me upright. I know what he did, she said quietly. I blinked. He told you. Something flickered across her expression, something brief and complicated.
No.
I just know my brother. A pause. Stepbrother. She always made that distinction. I used to think it was just accuracy. Later I'd understand it meant something more. I gave a small, brittle laugh.
Yeah.
Well. I gestured vaguely at the building. I'm just gonna grab my things and go. Let me help you. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. We went upstairs together. She waited in the hallway while I gathered my things, silent, but present, the way someone stands close to you during a scary film without making a big show of it. And when I came out of the bathroom, Lily stepped forward without a word and gently folded my fingers around them. Her hands were warm, impossibly warm for someone standing in a cold hallway. I don't know what happened to me at that moment. Maybe it was the leftover grief from the night before, or the exhaustion, or the specific cruelty of finding myself in the apartment where I'd thought I was loved and realizing I'd been a fool the entire time. But my face crumpled, and I cried. Right there in the hallway. Ugly, embarrassing, full-body crying. Lily didn't hesitate. She wrapped both arms around me and pulled me against her shoulder, and she held me with the kind of steadiness that made me feel like she had very strong opinions about not letting go. He doesn't deserve your tears, she whispered against my hair. I gripped the front of her green sweater and tried to breathe. And something in me, something raw and confused and barely conscious, noticed that being held by her felt like coming indoors out of the cold. It started slowly, the way most things that change your life do. I'd been back in my own apartment for a week when Lily texted me, just to check in, she said.
Simple.
How are you sleeping? I stared at it for a long time before typing back. Terribly. You? Her response, I never sleep well when someone I care about is hurting. I read that 3 times. We fell into a rhythm. She'd come over on Tuesday evenings with tea she made herself, loose leaf, in a little tin, always different varieties, and we'd sit at my kitchen table and talk. Not about Adrian mostly. About everything else. She told me about her childhood, which had been quieter and lonelier than she made it sound. I told her about my mother, who was loving but exhausting, and my dream of writing something someday that wasn't just a journal entry no one would read. You should write this, she said one night, gesturing at the space between us like it was a story already being told. All of it. The betrayal, the mess, the survival. Her eyes were soft. Finding herself again. She said things like that. Quiet, precise things that landed somewhere deep and stayed there. There were nights we didn't talk much at all. We'd watch films on her couch. She had better taste than anyone I knew. I started noticing things. The way she'd reach over and tuck my hair behind my ear absent-mindedly, like she'd been doing it for years. The way she said my name, always a little quieter than everything else. The way she'd look at me across the room sometimes and not look away when I caught her. Not embarrassed. Just steady. Like she'd made her peace with being seen looking. It unsettled me. It also made my pulse do strange things that I wasn't ready to examine. One night in early November, I had a panic attack. It had been building all day. That familiar tightening in the chest, the shallow breathing, the specific spiral of you are not enough, and you will never be enough that Adrian had somehow planted in me like a seed. It hit me while I was doing dishes, of all things, and I slid down against the kitchen cabinet and couldn't get back up. I called Lily, without thinking. She was at my door in 20 minutes. She sat on the kitchen floor beside me and didn't say a word about it being strange or dramatic. She just took both my hands in hers and pressed them firmly against her chest and said, "Feel that?" Match it. Breathe with me. Her heartbeat was slow and even. I followed it back to myself. Outside, it had started to rain again. Lily, I said quietly, do you ever feel like you gave someone so much of yourself that when it's over you don't know which parts are still yours? She was quiet for a moment. Then, yes. The weight in that single syllable made me look at her. Her gaze was somewhere far away and a little sad, and I had the sudden, disorienting feeling that she wasn't talking about Adrian at all. We sat on her couch. The television was on, but neither of us was watching it. I'd spent weeks telling myself I was imagining it, projecting something, grief-addled and confused and reaching for warmth wherever I could find it. But sitting there in the low lamplight, I couldn't convince myself anymore. Lily, I said. Yeah. My throat felt tight. Why do you look at me like that? The room went very quiet.
She didn't pretend not to know what I meant.
That alone told me everything I needed to know about how long she'd been carrying this. I watched her jaw tighten slightly. I watched her look away, then back, watching the careful composure she always wore. Tell me, I said softly. Not demanding, just needing. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there was something in them I'd never seen before. Something unguarded and terrified and tender all at once. Because, she said, and her voice was barely above a whisper, I've loved you since the day Adrian introduced us. The air went out of the room. I stared at her. 3 years, she continued, her voice trembling only slightly, the way a held breath trembles when finally released. I watched you love him with everything you had, and I watched him, she stopped, pressed her lips together. I watched him treat something precious, like it was ordinary. Lily. I try to stay quiet. A short, helpless laugh. I was very good at it, honestly. Quiet is something I've always been good at. My heart was pounding. She reached out and cupped my face with one hand.
Just one.
So gently, like I was something fragile, and she understood that. You deserve someone who worships you, she whispered. Someone who keeps track of the tea you like and remembers what makes you laugh and holds you through panic attacks at midnight without a single second of hesitation. My eyes were burning. Lily, I breathed. What are you doing to me? Telling you the truth, she said simply. For the first time in 3 years.
I didn't kiss her that night.
I wanted to. God, I wanted to, in a way that both frightened and clarified me simultaneously. But I went home with my heart in total chaos, sat on my bed until 3 in the morning, and stared at the ceiling like it owed me answers. She was Adrian's stepsister. She had watched me love someone else for 3 years. She had loved me for 3 years. And now, in the rubble of the worst heartbreak of my life, I was falling. Not gently, the way I'd always imagined falling for someone. Falling. The kind where you look down and realize you're already halfway. It scared me. We didn't talk for 3 days. Not out of anger. I think we both needed to let the confession settle, let it take its shape in the open air. On the 4th day, she texted me, I made the vanilla chai you like. It's getting cold. I was at her door in 15 minutes. We didn't speak about it directly, for another week. But everything was different now, and we both knew it. The space between us on the couch grew smaller. The casual touches lasted a little longer. She started meeting my eyes when she said my name, and I stopped looking away. The night it finally happened was unremarkable in all the best ways. We'd been making dinner together, and there was flour on her cheek from the focaccia she'd been attempting, and I had been watching her laugh at her own mess for 5 full minutes with something warm and catastrophic expanding in my chest. I crossed the kitchen. I reached up and brushed the flour from her cheek with my thumb. She went very still.
Bella, she said.
A warning. A prayer. I know, I whispered.
Do you?
Because if you kiss me, she said quietly, I will not be able to pretend afterward that it didn't happen. I've been pretending things with you for 3 years, and I am done pretending. My heart cracked open like a window after a long winter. I'm not asking you to pretend, I said. I'm asking you to let me catch up. Something broke across her face, relief. She exhaled my name like she'd been holding it, and then I pressed my lips to hers. Soft at first. So soft. Like a question. She answered it. Her hand came up to cradle the back of my head, and she kissed me back with this heartbreaking gentleness, like she had practiced patience so long she had made an art of it, and now she was using all of it on me. I felt myself sign to her mouth. I realized distantly, and she made a small sound against my lips that undid me. Then something shifted. 3 years of her silence. 3 years of watching. 3 years of loving quietly and alone. They came forward all at once like a tide, and the kiss changed, became something deeper, more urgent, her fingers threading into my hair and mine curling against her jaw, and we were pressed close together against the kitchen counter. I was apologizing for every moment she'd spent unseen. She kissed me back like she forgave me. We broke apart, gasping. Her forehead dropped to mine. We stood there breathing each other's air in the warm kitchen light, and I started laughing, soft, dazed, helplessly happy laughter that I hadn't felt in so long I'd forgotten it lived in me. "Hi," I whispered. "Hi," she whispered back, smiling with her eyes still closed. What followed were the sweetest weeks of my life. We were not public. Not yet. We existed in the warmth of her apartment, like a secret the universe was keeping on our behalf. She learned the specific way I liked my tea sweetened. I learned that she had a habit of underlining sentences in books that broke her heart and folding the corners of pages that made her happy. I hadn't known someone could look at me like it was their choice. One night, she traced the lines of my palm absently while we lay together, and I watched her face in the low light. All that quiet intensity, all that careful, faithful heart, and I thought, this is what I was supposed to find at the end of the wreckage. "What are you thinking?" she murmured. I pulled her down and kissed her softly, slowly, the way she'd taught me, like there was no urgency, like we had all the time in the world, like the moment was something to be inhabited completely rather than rushed through. Her lips curved against mine. "You're getting very good at that. I have an excellent teacher." She laughed, that full, unguarded laugh I'd only recently discovered she had, and I held her face in both hands and kissed her again just to feel it. She'd press her mouth to my jaw, my throat, the curve of my shoulder like she was committing me to memory. "I've thought about this," she admitted once, quietly, into my hair, "for longer than is probably fair to tell you." "Tell me anyway," I said.
She did.
And later, lying in the quiet dark with her arms around me and my head on her chest listening to her heartbeat, slow, Adrian showed up at Lily's apartment at 8 in the evening, knocking with the particular rhythm of someone who thinks ownership entitles them to access. Lily opened the door. I was visible behind her, and I watched Adrian's face do something I hadn't expected. He looked wounded. The man who had told me I was too emotional, who had not apologized. That man stood in the doorway of his stepsister's apartment and looked genuinely, bafflingly hurt. "You're serious," he said.
Not to me.
To Lily. "Adrian. She's my girlfriend, Lily." "I'm not your girlfriend," I said clearly. I stood up. "I haven't been your girlfriend since the night you told me you were tired of pretending I mattered."
He turned to me.
Something complicated moved through his face. Guilt, maybe. Arriving 3 months too late. "Bella, I was..."
What?
"Stupid? Careless?" I kept my voice steady with everything I had. "I know what you were, Adrian. I was there." "She's my sister." "Stepsister," Lily said quietly. She'd crossed her arms. Her voice was calm the way a sea is calm before something vast moves beneath it. "And I have loved Bella longer and more honestly than you ever managed."
His jaw worked.
"This is a betrayal." "A betrayal," I repeated, and something in me almost laughed, but not unkindly. Just with the clear, quiet certainty of someone who has finally found their footing. "Adrian." He looked at me. "You lost me," I said, "the moment you treated my heart like it didn't matter." My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. "What are you feeling right now? That hollow thing in your chest?" The silence stretched. He looked between us, at Lily, steady and certain, at me, no longer the soft, anxious girl who apologized for her own emotions. Something in his expression shifted from anger into something smaller and more honest. Something almost like recognition. He left without another word. The door closed behind him. Lily and I stood in the quiet for a moment. Then she turned to me, and the expression on her face was the closest thing to reverent I'd ever seen directed at me. "You," she said softly, "were incredible." I crossed the room and wrapped my arms around her waist and pressed my face into her neck and breathed. I was terrified. I admitted against her skin. Her arms came around me, tight and warm and certain. "Couldn't tell," she murmured, and I felt her smile against my temple. I pressed a kiss to the top of her head, and she reached back without looking to find my hand and hold it. And just like that, everything was exactly enough. I became more happy with my new life.